It's not often that I run into a shooter that lets me shut my brain down and mindlessly pull the trigger, but also has the audacity to grab me by my neck and throw me for a loop on occasion. However, Trepang2 does just that. Or wait, is it squared? Is it Trepang squared? I mean, 2 squared? Trepang does just that. I initially played the demo a few weeks ago and took everything I played for granted, thinking it was just a sick shooty McShoot pants experience that was right up my alley. One key provided by the Team 17 folks in Key Mailer, thanks a bunch, and a few hours later, and I can confidently say that I am both radically incorrect, but also hit the nail right on its head. Bitch, is this literally the back rooms? Hold on, wait, is this, Motherfucker! Booting the game up, we awaken as Subject 106, or 6 for short. 6 was captured by a hostile faction known as Horizon, but is then rescued by a currently unknown benefactor. Initially restrained, some sneaking and crawling will lead to removal of his restraints and a pistol, and from there, Trepang2 begins. Throughout the game, 6 will have access to 2 abilities at any given moment. One being a cloak that immediately causes enemies to lose track of you and focus on your last known position, and then a focus mode that acts as bullet time, slowing everything down to make life easier. Very fear inspired. And that inspiration is something you're going to feel constantly throughout your playthrough. In higher difficulties, these abilities are going to be key to surviving most firefights. Stealth is an option once you factor in suppressed weapons, juggling between popping enemies from a distance, and then using your cloak to reposition for another shot or melee takedown. It's definitely fun stuff. The focus mode is as straightforward as it gets. Time slows down, ultimately leading to you being able to dish out more damage with easier to hit targets, but also taking less damage as enemies don't fire back as quickly. These abilities don't get upgraded throughout the game, but I never felt like they needed them. Outside of those two, you'll also get the ability to dual wield most weapons towards the middle of the story, which is nice, and the game acknowledges its power by amping up enemy counts for the rest of the game, which enhances the Supersoldier death machine fantasy. Trepang's weapon list is rather small, and you'll definitely find the 1 or 2 weapons you prefer to run over the rest very quickly. The pistol, SMG, shotgun, and assault rifle are the common showrunners, but you'll also find more powerful and unique weapons like the minigun or the pipe gun, which burst fires 3 explosive rounds. And while you'll always have ammo for those more common weapons like the pistol, why would you ever deny yourself the chance to dual wield grenade launchers? I mean, what are you, stupid? Come on now, it's 2 grenade launchers, both hands, dust double the explosives, come on now. Weapons will come with attachments such as a basic old-fashioned suppressor, but there's also laser sights and scopes and so on. Just like the weapon list, the attachment count isn't very high, but they're there and they do make a noticeable impact in combat. These attachments are found throughout the levels in these cases and will permanently unlock on the corresponding weapon. Enemies can also drop weapons with attachments you haven't unlocked, but you'll still need to find the proper case to keep it permanently. And speaking of variety, the environments do excel in this aspect, but they lack interactivity. You won't really be blasting through enemy cover or leveling an entire room, which leaves a lot to be desired to better fulfill that Supersoldier fantasy. I'm not asking for battlefield levels of destruction, but there's desks that take more hits than the bosses, and I'm dual wielding grenade launchers. Back to the story. After slaughtering your way through the black site, you're transported via helicopter to the base of operations for Task Force 27. Task Force 27 looks to take down Horizon and their CEO because of their not so family friendly scientific pursuits. The base serves as your intermission hub where you can change the color and design of your clothes, partake in a combat simulator, practice at the shooting range, and select your next mission. There isn't a single soul physically inside the base besides the quartermaster, who only has a few lines of dialogue before or after each mission. It'd be okay to be empty if it just wasn't so big, with plenty of little nooks and crannies where a soul or 2 could have been placed with just a looping animation just to give it some life. The base itself leaves much to be desired, but I've seen a couple of comments from the developers on the Steam discussions acknowledging this, so I won't beat on a dead horse for much longer. The next mission is an assault on the Pandora facility to find a one Dr. Emerson. The helicopter ride gets interrupted by AA guns, so we go off to disable the artillery for our allies to deploy in. This is your first real mission. Although this is a very science-focused company, the first section feels much more like a top tax bracket living, very club and resort-esque, which means it's only right to litter the whole joint with blood and bodies. This first section will introduce you to juggernaut enemies who are simply just heavily armored dudes with gas tanks on their back that will explode with enough bullet-shaped decorations. A couple of sections where you get to fight with some fellow task force members, which they actually do damage to enemies and they hold their own. It's always a huge thumbs up for me when AI actually do damage and contribute to fights. At the end of the first mission, escaping the black site, and prior to entering the second half of this level, you'll run into a high value target, which is a secondary completion system for people who very much need to be unalived by you. This spans across both main and secondary missions. Some of these targets look very different than the others, and it definitely sparks interest to delve into the side missions and the main missions to see why the hell that is. The second half of the mission shows you what's really under the surface of Trepang and where I think the game should have capitalized on more. Entering the main Pandora building, you'll feel the tone shift from high octane to dark intense as covered bodies litter the lobby and hallways, lying dormant on stretchers and medical beds. The music abandons you while imagery of distorted human bodies covers the walls approaching the elevator down, and the elevator ride down confirms that there's bigger prey lurking around. Trepang has a tendency to dip into horror at moments, and it'd be a disservice to the game to say that it didn't completely take me by surprise, especially as someone who played the demo. The execution on the horror isn't always perfect. Even that first elevator ride down introducing you to the horror element kinda overstayed its welcome because of the way that it was delivered. Within the basement, the scene continues to spiral downward with even more bodies and blood as far as the eye can see. The entire level has been sealed off in an attempt to keep something in or out. It isn't until you lift this lockdown that you get a glimpse of the danger.
Do not engage that subject. Our objective is to find Dr. Emerson.
Proceeding forward, you encounter the unique enemy type for this mission, a fleshy zombie thing. It's ugly, it's spooky, and it has friends in every place. The first appearance was actually a very cool introduction, forcing you to stare it down as it broke through the window, but then just popping in the head kind of killed the mood pretty fast. The next run-in is a horde of these enemies, but you've kind of already established that they're just grunts with acid. I opted not to use the cloak during this fight, but you could easily make the encounter child's play by using it to create gaps between them and then going about your day popping them in the head. Moving forward, you finally meet face to face with the big bad, some sort of edgy, grotesque Mothman. He gives you a good old spook and you fall into an escape sequence, and by then the horror kind of faded and then it turned into the high octane once again, and that kind of carries throughout the rest of the mission, which I'm not entirely against. The escape sequence felt fast because of how fast the character actually does move, and seeing all the enemies pop up and start banging and you can hear them breaking through the glass and all the other objects behind you, it did keep that sense of fear, so I actually enjoyed it. From that point on, the main story doesn't delve much into the horror again outside of one other mission, and then it's all rootin', tootin', shooting from there on. Hey bitch, hey, don't turn the fucking lights off, hey. Hey, what'd I say about the lights? Big dog. None of that. None of that. The side missions do tap into a little bit more if that's your cup of tea. The actual story itself is a bit confusing to keep up with, but it clicked for me by the time the credits rolled. There are intel pieces you can find throughout each mission for more lore, and the developers did say that they tried to put lore literally everywhere, even in song lyrics, but I didn't find any of them to help me as much as apparently listening to what the characters were saying and remembering what they said before and then using my brain to link it all together. Apparently that works pretty well, who would have thought? And all that's to say that the story isn't exactly the strong suit here, but it does have a lot of interesting notes thread throughout, and they did leave room for further development, so be on the lookout for a Trepang2. There's about 6 side missions to double your playtime, in addition to a big list of difficulties that will unlock more cosmetics and even cheats depending on which missions you complete at certain difficulties to further pad it out. There's the obvious really fun powerful cheats such as infinite cloak, infinite focus, grenades, stamina, things like that, but there's also some more interesting ones such as making the enemies drop grenades upon death or only headshots kill, and most importantly, they locked the ability to aim down sights behind a cheat. Not the end of the world, not the core vision for the game, but it's interesting that they have that option in there and you have to unlock it by playing the game at a certain difficulty. The combat simulations as well provide some mindless slaughter to escape the objectives and really let you nail down and focus on what makes Trepang so fun. And that's holding 2 big guns, killing a lot of enemies, Being a super soldier, going invisible, slowing down time, jumping over disc, kicking that guy, doing a lot of badass things all at once. Expanding on the combat simulations alone could give this game a lot more life, especially if you can factor in a chance of any amount of player modability. The gunplay feels great, and there isn't a whole lot that's needed to really just capitalize on that. Just give us enemies, ammo, guns, and let us go at it. However, in the end, I was still satisfied, but I was definitely craving more concentrated mixes of the horror and combat, and more missions in general, and more guns, and more attachments, and just more things to interact with in general. I think my main issue with Trepang was actually just wanting more in nearly every aspect. I could definitely see this game being an absolute deal if you could snag it on sale, especially half off or more. But I don't know if it's worth the whole $30 price tag if you don't plan on making use of the combat simulations or going for higher difficulties and the cheats that come with it. But if you do, you're definitely in for a hell of a time. I'll see you guys in the next one. This game doing too much right now. Yo, can I get out of the back rooms? Like, I like dead ass genuinely just want to shoot shit.
Not allowed.
Bitch, 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 bitch. Oh shit. I'm out this bitch. I'm out this bitch. What the fuck?